It's part 2 of a dogfight battle between the Galaxy Axiom and the Electrify M. I'm Aaron Baker from PhoneDog.com, and part 2, let's see which one holds up in the full dogfight. To kick off part 2 of this dogfight between the Samsung Galaxy Axiom and the Motorola Electrify M, I want to talk a little bit more about the build quality of these two devices, because when you pick it up for the first time in the store, that's going to be the first thing you notice about both of these units. But before we talk about that, going to stop and give some love to our partners at Best Buy Mobile for giving us devices like this, and like the Galaxy S3 and the Note 2 and the One X Plus for use in our One Paw Bandit giveaway game. When you go into Best Buy Mobile, you'll deal with unbiased representatives, whether it's AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, or Verizon. Whatever they sell that's the best for you, they'll make sure you're hooked up in an unbiased manner at Best Buy Mobile. So let's take a look at these. Axiom, Electrify M, build quality is very different across the board here. So you've got a 2,100 milliamp hour battery in this device. It's a little bit chubbier in terms of the overall look and feel, and the curves, the edges are a little bit more rounded. So it's got more of a rounded feel to it, whereas this has a little bit more of an industrial kind of boxy feel to it. So quality-wise, they give a slight edge to the Electrify M, but again, you may not like that boxy feel, and you may want the smaller display. In that case, this kind of a rounded resembles a Galaxy S3. So looks-wise, if you like the Galaxy S3, you're probably going to like this. You may be frustrated with the smaller display. So there's a lot of things to consider here between the display size, between the build quality, between the processor specs, and all the different internals that make up these devices. As you can see, there's a lot to choose from, or a lot of choices you got to make in this buying decision with US Cellular. So build quality is definitely different here. Let's take a look at quadrant standard on both of these devices and see which one comes out on top. Just as a recap, this has a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon S4 CPU. This has a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon S4 CPU. So we'll run the benchmark on both of these devices so you can see how they perform. 2,100 milliamp hour battery here, 2,000 milliamp hour battery over on the Electrify M. I give the slight edge in battery life to the Galaxy Axiom because it is a bigger battery. It's 2,100 milliamp hours. It's removable, which is a nice touch for a lot of people that travel on a regular basis. And number 3, battery life just all around is a little bit more decent. Now, 4G LTE is obviously going to drain your battery on both of these units. So if you're in an LTE coverage area with US Cellular, keep that in mind. But what I will say, battery life is slightly better. I got about 11 to 12 hours of moderate use. Actually got a little bit longer now that I think of it out of this one. I think I got like 14 or 15 hours on this one because I'm running 3G, and granted it is roaming, which roaming historically does drain the battery a little bit more, but it's a small display, it's a big battery, and I'm not roaming on LTE, I'm roaming on 3G. So much less of a battery hog, a little bit more power conservative. I like the way that sounds. Anyway, battery life is a little bit better over here. And then over here on this device, again, 2,000 milliamp hours is non-removable. Battery life is certainly decent on this device. Don't get me wrong. I've been pretty pleased with it. I got about 12 hours of moderate use on the Electrify M. When I say moderate use, this is calling, texting, and again, keep in mind, it's much like a deck of cards or some dominoes, if you will. When you're dealing with devices that are roaming, that are outside of their coverage area, battery life is affected, network connectivity is affected, so I can't really give you an accurate read on US Cellular's coverage, and as a result, it's kind of hard to give you accurate battery numbers as well. But what I will say, I think you'll be fine with both, but if you're a road warrior, you may want to consider this just because the battery is removable, it's a little bit larger, and of course the display is smaller, so you get more bang out of your battery buck, if you will. 3,903 over here on quadrant standard. This one is still sending, taking its sweet time. 3,903. Let's see how this one performs. Sending. Is it going to send? We will find out. It is roaming on a slow network. 4,994. So you can see quadrant standard significantly better over on the Electrify M, making it the fastest device between these two. Take it with a grain of salt, though, because quadrant standard is not always indicative of day-to-day performance. That's always something to keep in mind. You know, both of these devices are reasonably fast. TouchWiz performs incredibly well. So overall, this is very similar to the Galaxy S3 and the Note 2. As you can see, the color themes look the same. You got your phone application, your contacts. All this looks very similar to what you're used to on those devices. Some elements are missing in terms of overall animations, but for the most part, this is an almost copied version, or carbon copy version, if you will, of the Note 2 and the S3's version of TouchWiz. So again, very similar across the board. If you played with either one of those devices, you're going to be used to this one between the way that the apps and the widgets work. And of course, you got your downloads folder as well, or your downloaded applications. And of course, the home screens work the same here, 7 home screens. So overall look and feel and usability, very similar. Motorola's is a little bit different here. And I'm doing all this before I jump into camera because I want to show you some of these personalization differences between the two phones. You've got quick settings over here, which is something that's kind of new, and you can pinch out to access all your home screens. I don't care, as I've said before, for Motorola's implementation of home screens, because no matter what you do, when you hit home, it automatically defaults to the one that's furthest to the left. So if you're like me, I like my home screen square in the middle. So with these dots, it shows me that I'm right in the middle. It's an OCD thing. It's just something I like. Maybe you don't care. But even this, let's say I want to make this my home screen, I go home and it automatically defaults to the left page. As you can see here, for example, if I move this to the third one, for example, and I go over there, when I hit home, it defaults back to the one that's closest to the left. Now, quick settings are useful. I do like having ringtone, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, all this stuff quickly and easily accessible just by swiping to the left. That's a nice setting. And another thing I really like about Motorola, their Smart Actions. It's a fantastic application. We can go in here and take a look. And let's go through Smart Actions. Come on, skip. I've already done this. Get started. Smart Actions. And it gives you basically a list of things you can do. So for example, when you're driving, you can set it to where it disables things and sends auto message responses to say, hey, I'm driving. Stop calling me. Stop texting me. Sleeping, meeting, working out. Let's say you walk into work and you want your phone to go on silent automatically. Will GPS you based on your location and do exactly what you tell it to do. So that's definitely nice. So home as well, battery saver, workout, all that different stuff available on this device. So those are great touches to have, and it's something that makes Motorola distinguished from Samsung. Now over here, customization-wise, there are a lot of different choices here. One of my personal favorites, we'll go back to messaging just to highlight this really briefly. Go ahead and discard this, settings, and then we'll come in here to bubble style and background style. You can change the overall look and feel of messages, change the color theme, change the background theme, and can select your own background if you want to as well. So if I've got a picture in my image files, for example, I can come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to make this picture of me the background. And this may terrify a lot of people, but I can do this, and then that's what it's going to look like. So when I have my messages, that can be the background. So those kind of customization choices are really cool, and then you can change the lock screen around a little bit as well and make it look different than what you see right here. Add some customizations to the bottom for shortcuts, so I can just swipe right up, or should be able to swipe right up. Let's see. There we go. Shortcut to open up application, and I can modify those as well. Last but not least, let's take a look at camera here. 5 megapixels with 720p recording, 8 megapixels with 1080p recording. We'll jump right in here. Camera. And let's say 5 megapixels. And take a look. Let's pull out the Galaxy Note 2. That's just what happens to be closest. We'll focus in on the Samsung logo here and see how these phones perform. Focus in. So really a decent picture, in my opinion, for a 5 megapixel camera. Then over here, Motorola's has remained pretty much unchanged for the past couple of years. I remember this overall look and feel from the Droid 3. So it's been like this for a while. HDR. We can go ahead and do that. Yeah, let's do HDR. Why not? And let's take that picture. And so you can see really a clean, good-looking image over here. Though I will say, if history is any indication, Motorola's photo application, Motorola's camera application, I should say, does kind of slow down after months of use. I've found that on any Motorola device I've worked with after like 4 or 6 months, it just kind of slows down. So maybe it won't happen with Android 4.1. I haven't tested it that long on Android 4.1, but still, colors look nice in this, a little bit darker, a little bit richer, and you can see the Samsung logo pretty clearly. Whereas over here, let's go into gallery and take a look. You can still see it pretty clearly, but you can kind of see the color differences between these two devices. Overall, both cameras are fine. I'll give a slight edge to the Motorola Electrify M in the camera department. So we can go right back home and finish out this dogfight. I'm not going to do any speed tests because I'm not roaming in a native, or I'm roaming rather in a non-native US Cellular coverage area. So I'm not on US Cellular. It's not accurate to do a speed test. Going to skip that for this dogfight and go ahead and tell you the winner of this dogfight. So it's always a challenge. It depends on what you like, and there are a bunch of different choices available at US Cellular. There's a lot to like about both of these smartphones, and I think for either for either device, you're going to be happy with what you get. That said, it's not like 10 years ago, or not even like 5 years ago, where your device dictated your plan. Pretty much you're paying the same amount of money for a smartphone regardless of which one you buy. So you're paying for the data plan, you're paying for your minutes, you're paying for your texting regardless of which device you get. So I say spend a little bit of extra money and get a device that you're really happy with for 2 years. To that end, the winner of the dogfight is the Motorola Electrify M, giving it the winner, the crown, if you will, of the dogfight battle, because it's got a great combination of specs. It's thin, it's light, it's got 4G LTE capabilities, much like this device, and it's got a nice display that's edge to edge. So there's a lot to like here. Android 4.1 with Google Now, also a big perk to have that ability out of the box, or I should say out of the box once you update the software to Android 4.1. They're both great phones. Highly recommend them both. But that said, Electrify M wins the battle. Keep it locked on PhoneDog.com for continuing coverage of both of these devices, the Axiom and the Electrify M. Let me know what you think of this dogfight. PhoneDog_Aaron on Twitter, Facebook, Facebook.com/HiAaronBaker, and then, of course, on Google Plus as well at gplus.to/PhoneDog. Thanks for watching. Much more coverage to come on both of these devices and all this Android craziness as we see the HTC One released, all the Mobile World Congress stuff released, and Samsung's next Galaxy unveiled next week. Stay tuned to PhoneDog.com for continuing coverage, and as always, we'll see you next time.